from California is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for the record, I'd like to also introduce the opposition to this bill from 90 conservation, recreation, sportsman groups, including Grant County Board of Commissioners, Summit County Board of Commissioners, Eagle County Board of Commissioners, besides the other agencies.
The gentlewoman's request is covered under general leave.
Thank you, ma'am. And I now yield some time, as much time as may consume, to my colleague, Mr. Peter DeFazio.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for such time as he may consume.
Well, here I are again. We had a real problem. The Forest Service did overreach and trigger this issue. Later on, we will have an amendment offered by Mr. Paulus from Colorado, whose ski areas originally brought this issue to him, who now oppose this bill, to narrow the scope of this bill down to assuring that the Forest Service doesn't re-propose the rule which they have withdrawn, which would have caused the problem. Okay, the rule was offered, there was litigation, a new rule was begun, the Forest Service withdrew the rule, there's no rule pending. But we're going to pass legislation that affects all water rights in the western United States because of a problem that doesn't currently exist. Now, you know, this is fairly extraordinary. We held a hearing on this when the government was shut down, so not very many people knew about or got to participate in the hearing. I was there. I read the bill. It's a bad habit I have. And I pointed out that the bill was so broadly written that it would impact any and all federal actions that have to do with water in the United States of America. Now, that goes way beyond ski areas and water rights. It goes way beyond farmers or individual property rights. It's untold consequences. So as a consequence, the Republicans at the time denied it, but now this bill has 6 savings clauses. What does that mean? Well, the bill was so broadly and poorly drafted to begin with, they now are carving out 6 exemptions to say, oh, we didn't mean to say we'd take away tribes' water rights. Oh, we didn't mean to say that we couldn't have any control of Bureau reclamation projects and deal with flood control. And oh, we didn't mean, and we didn't mean. So there's 6 savings clauses in this bill because it's so poorly and broadly drafted and has so many unfathomable unintended effects. But then there's number 6 savings clause, which says this bill does nothing. Now, how could that be? Well, because we are here about headlines. We're here about a headline that will be meaningless by some gullible reporter somewhere who actually believes what they're saying on that side of the aisle. Here's the final savings clause of this unbelievably poorly drafted bill with unbelievable unintended consequences. Nothing in this act limits or expands any existing authority of the secretaries, that is Interior and Agriculture, to condition, this covers all the projects, to condition any permit, approval, license, lease, allotment, easement, right-of-way, or other land use or occupancy agreement on federal land subject to the respective jurisdictions. So in the body of the bill, they create a whole bunch of problems by threatening concessionaires in parks, issues relating to the Columbia River in Washington and Oregon, and a whole host of projects that relate to use of the water in the West. It's a very sensitive issue, the use of water in the West. And then they carve out 5 particular exceptions, which are really hot-button issues. And then they have this Uber exception, which says this bill doesn't do anything. So what does the bill do? Well, that's the whatever $1,000 question here today. It may do something unbelievably destructive to private property rights. And, on that side of the aisle, we hear about this all the time. A couple of weeks ago, they passed another show bill pretending to deal with the drought in California by preempting 100 years of water law in the state of California. Preempting, federal government preempting it. Now they're going to fight for water rights in the West, or that's at least the headline they hope they get out of this. But that's not what they're doing, because actually this bill, for the first time, has a federal definition in statute of water right, which would seem to preempt or contradict the states. But it's sort of got a savings clause, so it says, well, we're creating a new federal water right, but it really doesn't mean anything because we're not affecting the states. And oh, by the way, we got a clause at the end saying we're not doing anything at all. Anyway, so why are we here? We're here because there was a narrow issue, which we could have, on a bipartisan way, agreed to deal with. It could have been what's called a suspension bill. Probably wouldn't even had a vote on it on the floor of the House. One of those routine bills we pass generally on Mondays or Tuesdays, travel days, that require a 2/3 vote because they're non-controversial. Could have been done that way, but no, that wouldn't have got a headline. It would have solved a problem, well, a problem that used to exist that doesn't exist anymore, that might exist in the future. It would have solved that problem if it ever existed again, if the Forest Service proposed the rule again, which they aren't going to. But let's just say some future administration chose to do that. We could have preempted them that way. But no, we couldn't just do that, because how could you come here and say you're fighting for the cattlemen and you're fighting for agriculture and you're fighting for the little guy and private property rights and all those wonderful buzzwords around here when you're not really doing that, but get an undeserved headline out of it if you find a gullible reporter. That's why we're here today. It's kind of a waste of time, to tell the truth. But if you want to fix the bill and potentially fix a future problem if they do go after the ski area water rights again, vote for the Paulus Amendment, go back to the narrow scope of the bill, and that's where we started. And if that's adopted, that would be great, and we could vote for it. If that's not adopted, I would recommend that members think long and hard about it, because you may be causing unintended effects with this bill by defining a federal water right that potentially preempts and upends hundreds of years of precedent in the western United States and causes untold damage. It'll certainly make a lot of lawyers happy, but it's not probably going to make your farmers, your ranchers, and others happy who you think you're pleasing here today. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oregon yields back. The gentlewoman from California reserves.